The game I want to play today has to do with expectations. This really interesting guy named Dave Burns was talking about expectations recently. And I mean, I've long heard people saying, like, oh, well, expectations are bad, or having too many expectations are bad, and, try to just not have expectations. And that's, something that seems to be this, like, words of wisdom common thing that keeps getting put back out there. But he said something really interesting and different, and it can be played like a game. I liked it. It was just fresh to me because it's like basic, but seems like, yeah, okay, we can really work with that. He was saying your expectations can kind of get set like this little narrow tube, and they can get really encrusted and like hard and rigid because you're just going down that one pathway like all the time. This like pathway of expectations is not very varied, it's very limited. It stays in this one little range, and so we just have that. And I've also heard people talking about that with like neural pathways, and you just like ski down that same ski slope every time, and so then it's really easy. It's already worn in. It's like a rutted in path. And expectations can be like that too. And so he was saying that instead of confronting the rigidity and the limitations of your own expectations by trying to just not have expectations, or like let them go, or just like drop down all the walls of your own expectations, like instead to bust up the hard encrusted walls of your expectations, you have more expectations, like beat them down with a massive amount of new expectations, just like bust them up with tons of expectations, which seems like, oh, really? That's interesting. Usually the advice is to just like get rid of your expectations or just let them go, but to have more, battle them with a barrage of more expectations. And that can, because his point was that can kind of add new expectations. It widens the tunnel. It breaks up the walls of that narrow path, and, we just like put more pathways down, like all next to each other. And it widens the path kind of by just putting a ton more expectations out there. So it's a game. We play, someday I would like to, all the time. And we play all kinds of games that have to do with what you want and stuff like that, that gets you thinking and connected with you and what you want, and that are just fun to share, what your dreams are and things with other people. But this one will be a little different. This one will be taking things that you want, or things that you might have said in a someday I'd like to kind of game, and then coming up with as many different ideas on how you can get that thing as you can. I mean, outlandish, outrageous, like totally impossible and unrealistic, every tiny little thing. Because then what you're doing, I mean, they're not expectations per se, but that's what he means. You're coming up with possibilities. Maybe possibilities is the best way. The way to beat down the encrusted expectations is to, pummel it with possibilities. And, so you're coming up with as many different possibilities. It's great for creativity, but it's also this interesting way to widen your tunnel of expectations by beating all the crusted layers off with a barrage of possibilities. So, somebody will take like a really basic one. And in this talk with Dave Burns, he was saying like, okay, we'll take a really basic one of like, how you could potentially earn $1 million, and people generally start to think about things that they expect, well, I could do this job. I could get hired for this. I could, get inheritance, things that they can conceive of. But then with more creativity, like some people were writing in the comments, things that it's like, oh, that's amusing. It's playful. I wouldn't have thought of that. Like a clerical error at the bank and I somehow got $1 million, or whatever, some class action lawsuit that I had no idea of that was like about the tire that I happened to have on my car, or, just whatever crazy thing that they could think of, or, something that might be like somebody dropped this and then I returned it to them, and then they gave me this connection with this person, and I met this person at that house. I mean, you can get crazy. It's almost like a storytelling game, or it's like, come up with a crazy story. You met that person while dropping off this thing that they had lost. And then when you met that person, that person turned out to have this idea, and that ended up being this $1 million project that you did. I don't know, so it can be as creative and playful as you like, but what it's actually doing is exercising your possibilities and potentially, opening up that narrowness of your expectations that might be limiting you on what you get to experience and what you get to do in this world. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're actually trying to solve the problem, like come up with the way that you will be able to earn $1 million, because who knows, like, if that will actually be. It's not like trying to solve a puzzle. It's like coming up with all the possibilities so that, and he was saying, like, if you have 1 million different tunnels into your, reality pathway, then things can get to you easier because there's 1 million different tunnels, and you're just punching 1 million different tunnels, 1 million different possibilities into your reality pathway to, make it easier for things to happen for you, make it easier for you to experience things, make your reality more rich. And it can be a fun game. I think it's even fun to play with kids. Very similar to, like, someday I want to, but what are all the possibilities? Get outlandish, get ridiculous, surprise each other with it, laugh about the elaborate story that you've created, and, like, really, enjoy it.